Dax, what's going on, brother?
I am so sorry. I had a call with Trezor, and then I had a call scheduled 2 weeks ago with Jake, and then at time zones. So my Great Fun team, and then I'm like 11:30 to 12, and then I can jump on at 12:30, and it's like, oh wait, you said Eastern time, and it was all my bad.
Dude, no, you're good. You're good. You know, you're one of the first teams I communicated with via email to like get you on schedule because everyone's so Web3 crypto centric. I'm just going through Twitter, going through Telegram, and so I was like, man, I hope I didn't send something wrong or send the wrong link or something. But you're with us, and that's all that matters. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We're gearing up for that real business venture. Like I said, I've been traveling all week. As you can see, I'm in Dallas right now. I just finished TexCap for the unveiling of the Texas stock market, and the Texas stock market has agreed to allow to be a first party liquidity pool and like trading platform for cryptocurrency as well. So we were meeting with the actual stock exchange to talk about listings, talk about working like that, on all that kind of stuff. There's a really cool interview with the head of the new exchange on my X. But then on top of that, it was NABS, North American Blockchain Summit. And the real big deal with like a project and be legitimate, especially working in the privacy space, is making sure we have our ass covered legally. So that's both why like emails everything. And I met with Wilson Strom, Gray Reed, 4 or 5 of the biggest international SEC privacy and law firms in the world. And I went to dinner with them. It was amazing. They stuffed me full of really good barbecue. And the team and I were moving forward with some really amazing firms and you know, representation. Because I saw some stuff on there that I wasn't really going to like bring up or like talk about on Twitter, which was like, oh, coins like this and projects like this always die because of legislation. I'm like, that's why we're taking on legislation first. That's why I'm building in public. I'm talking about this as I'm building it, and I'm meeting with lawyers, stakeholders. 2 weeks ago, I met with Austin. I met with 41 different members of the Texas legislature to talk about privacy law, and making sure that all this stuff is being built responsibly.
Okay. We got a lot to unpack there.
Absolutely.
I guess we should probably, before we even get into just everything you just threw at us here, let's start with you, Dax, because a lot of people are gonna watch this back that don't actually know what Zera is. You have a great community here that's just holding it down, super active in the chat here. But we got to start from the start. So first and foremost, Dax, who are you? Why are you so interested in privacy and hardware? And then we'll get into what is Zera.
Yeah, so I'm Dax the developer. I am a senior software engineer. I have worked all over the industry. After my internship with X and with some open source places, I ended up at USAA building the credit card experience, debt obligations, all that stuff, legal compliance, and how your credit card actually works with the bank. And I worked with USAA directly there. And then I left and did some live streaming, did some of that, got into the creator space, worked with Mr. Beast projects, stuff like that in the background as the devs there. And through that community, I met Eric Bouchard, who was the head of DevRel at MetaMask. And for 2-3 years, I worked really closely with MetaMask and the MetaMask team. I was even a DevRel rad contributor. I got on stage at ETH Global New York and Permissionless 2023 here in Austin. And that was super, super fun. I got to learn about the new SDK, build experiences and demos, and help build the open source community through that. After that, the tech market slowed a little bit. I worked for an AI-based advertising agency. Didn't like that. Didn't like how they stole all the customers' data, put it into a big bucket, and then tried to train into Terminator AI on that stuff, and didn't have ethicists or people on staff that would really call out, hey, this thing's turning out really unethical ads or just anything to get engagement. And so I left there, and I ended up at Foundry for a little bit, doing working at one of their sites out in West Texas. And at that time, with the market as slow as it was in general for tech, not just for crypto, but like in general for tech at the start of the year, things were picking back up. So I decided, hey, I have some money saved. I'm going to work on a PhD. And I wanted to go back to school and do my PhD thesis on math and science. And it really fell into that cryptography land. And I fell in love with zero knowledge proofs because I'd been working with them off and on, especially at MetaMask, working with the Ethereum chain, ZK Sync, ZK Scroll. I love the team at ZK Scroll. Huge shout out.
Not to pause you while you're going here, but maybe tell us explain to us what ZKPs are and zero knowledge proofs. I know that's a big part of what you're building. So just to help us non-tech bros out there, what is a
Yeah.
ZKP simply?
So zero knowledge proof, or depending on the type, there's a bunch of different types, but there's a succinct argument of zero knowledge, but they all fall under something called a VC, verifiable computing, right? It's this really old school idea. I kid you not. Verifiable computing can go all the way back to the 80s. The idea that you can write certain small functions to track bigger things. So the early forms of verifiable computing were like you get something small like a cell phone would be able to monitor an entire supercomputer correctly without all that extra compute to monitor it, because you could do simple math equations to check whether the complex thing it was doing was right or wrong. So when we came into zero knowledge proofs, the idea was come up with was this. Have you guys ever played the game Where's Waldo? Right? You get the booklet, you get the book, you got the and there's a guy in there with his pinstripe suit. If I were to just walk up to you on the street, hold up a picture and go, I know where Waldo is, without looking, without doing anything, how would you go? How do you know? You can't prove that to me. I could prove it to you by pointing out where Waldo was on the page, but then that gives up the answer. And we don't want to give up the answer. So what zero knowledge proofs does is allow us to have a math conversation where at the end of that conversation, you don't find out anything about where Waldo is on the page, but you know for a fact that I know where the answer to that question, that I am correct in telling the truth. And now extend that more generally to financial transactions or to anything in finance, right? If I could prove to you without opening up the kimono that I have the $50,000 I need to buy this car, then why are you going to the dealership or the bank and giving them a credit check, putting down collateral, giving them your social security number and all this stuff or giving them even like 3 years of bank statements? You know what I mean? When all you would have to do is have a zero knowledge proof conversation and prove that, I do have this money in the bank, or I do have this, this asset, this collateral, ready to go. And so we just took that a step further. And by being able to prove that, hey, there's an asset secured on chain, and that, hey, this unknown person, it does own it and it is anonymous, but it is verified, then I can hand off that proof between 2, 3, 4 people and be able to anonymously transfer things offline. And that was the whole idea behind Zera, is being able to lock these assets anonymously in a dark pool, shielded pool, whatever kind of terminology you want to come up with, a mixer, all these really cool different pieces of tech that teams like Elusive, Tornado Cash, and other privacy companies have built for us, and really just leverage that to bring tech and bring crypto back to what it was supposed to be, right? The first Bitcoin that was really ever spent was bought like 15,000 Bitcoin on 2 pizzas, right? Yeah. It was meant to buy guns, butter, and beer. And we want to bring that kind of ethos back to crypto, not something that was, controlled by the hedge funds and controlled by big media. We want everybody and their mom to be able to anonymously and safely spend money as if it's cash, and crypto as if it's cash.
That's super interesting. I think that explanation nailed it on the head. And now when you stand back and look at the word ZKP, or zero knowledge proofs, it literally describes it in the name, right? Zero knowledge, but verifiable proof that I have something.
You gain zero knowledge about the topic, the product, but the answer is truthful.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. So you kind of started getting into Zera, and the reason you built this, I think that's a really good prerequisite there. Maybe tell us why you started building Zera based on the knowledge we just learned, and why it's so important and what it is. It seems like maybe it's a few things too, right?
Yeah, Zera really operates, the company itself operates as kind of a privacy playground for developers, is kind of how I phrase it, or a think lab. The core product, this Zera Cash, this offline cash alternative that we're building, is really kind of the logical conclusion of my PhD thesis. Our project has been amazing, community driven. Every single one of our community members is amazing, because I kid you not, this started as working on my PhD thesis, working out in my free time, thinking the same way that most people in the industry were thinking, right? That like, oh, privacy is something you got to build in your basement and surprise release it. Otherwise, the government's going to come after you. People are going to come after you. You have to release it anonymously. And so like, I thought these were just going to be research papers that I was going to publish in journals over the next few years. And while I was working on it, literally while I was working on one of the math proofs for making the zero knowledge actually work offline without a double spend. I was sitting there trying to solve this problem, and I was listening to a hacker podcast called Darknet Diaries, and they were talking about Pump Fund. And I had my MetaMask wallet, and so I bridged $50 over from my MetaMask wallet that everyone knew who I was. That was a doxed wallet, you know, all that stuff. And I threw $50 on Pump Fund, and the community picked up. Hold on, that's that software engineer from MetaMask. What's he doing on Solana? What are you working on? What are you working on? And so I tweeted some drafts of my thesis, and everyone went, "You have to do this. You just have to." And we hit the bonding curve in less than 4 hours. And then it started growing to the point where we hit 5, 10, $20 million in market cap. And I'm like, okay, I guess I have to quit my day job in this business. And the community has been behind me 200% from that point. Like, one of the biggest points I can point out, just on the phone call before this, talking to migrate.fun and the people who helped us do our migration, they said that they didn't think anyone by their best models would get over 80% participation in the migration. We got 95% participation.
Wow.
We got so much participation in my migration. I'm actually a little butthurt because that means we don't get as much in return coins in terms of like what our on-chain war chest will be to pull from. But no, it's amazing. And so we're going to make plenty from the fees, and our community has just blown every expectation of what the project could be out of the water, and being able to push for not just these products, but being able to push for a company where, like, every time we encounter a problem, right? Like, if you're a company and you have an on-chain war chest, that's now public information. Well, how do we shield that if you're Charles Schwab or JP Morgan, right? Like, I come from the traditional tech and business background where, like, once you've made those money from fees or from selling your iPhone, you know, you don't go out and publish your books. You know, you get to make strategic decisions on how to invest that money. You know, it's very cool and it's community funded, but if you're a big bank, you're not going to open up your books and put it free for everybody on blockchain. So building shielded pools, extending the technologies, and just every time we run into an issue, I'm able to add it to this big backlog that we have. We literally have a whole section in Notion called future R&D plans, of just every time we run into a problem that we think privacy can solve, it goes in there as another thing we can build later on and another thing we can work with. But right now, especially because of my history and my exposure to MetaMask and like good user development, our core product is the wallet, is the offline cash focus. So that as we build out this wallet, I want it to be seamless. I want you to hand it over to your grandma and she think it's her digital banking app and not even realize she's on crypto. Because those abstractions and those levels of good UI and UX design exist, and it's a matter of us pushing for them as industry standard, not just, oh, like MetaMask has done an amazing job. I'll never say anything bad about the team because I love them and the tech that they built, but it's still a browser extension. MetaMask is as good of an experience as you could ever possibly get, but it's a browser extension, and it will never be better than a browser extension. And that's where we want to come in and go, hey, we can still hook into these browser extensions in other contexts, directly on your desktop, directly on your mobile phone, and we can make that experience better without ever even screwing with your private keys or anything else. We can sign in just like you sign in with your wallet on any regular page. You'll be able to sign into our dashboard, get a much better user experience, get a much better trading experience than anywhere else in the ecosystem, and be able to, in the early demos, take advantage of those offline transactions by submitting what you want for those offline notes, being able to turn them into QR codes or even file downloads if you're a crazy person who wants to like stick it on a USB and hand it to somebody. You know, and so that will be our really early version and our early demos. And then we're moving in with, there's a company that was bought by Stripe called Privy, and they have been really amazing SDK and exposure to work with. And they have a whole platform for us to get approved by Coinbase, Binance, MoonPay, so that we can directly onboard them directly into the app. So grandma can put in her credit card and not even realize that she's just bought crypto to do this anonymous exchange. The UI just abstracts that all away. And it's just a one click as if she was using Venmo or Zelle.
Wow, this is what we used to dream of, you know, using the tech to kind of just abstract away the blockchain and just make things so easy for the user. I mean, how long in totality would you say you've been working on all of this so far?
This as Zera as a concept, 6 months. um, as like what I've wanted to do as a privacy nerd my whole career. Like I came out of high school like a hacker. Like I got in trouble because I wrote a virus that ended up not on the school computers, but on the school resource officer's cell phone. You know, and like so like I've always been this crazy hacker. You know, I have a Linux
Love that.
tattoo. You know, I've always
That's
been
commitment.
a crazy hacker. Yeah, I've always been a privacy focused nut job. I even used to run a Monero node back in the day. You know, and so like I I love privacy. I think it's deeply important. And then as I just became more mature, and this is where my crazy politics will come out, but as I became more mature and got involved in the industry and saw how it was like very tech bro focused, I realized that anonymity, being anonymous online while still being a good dev, putting out good code, meant that I could still make money as an openly gay engineer, or the women in the field, or trans people in the field could come out, put out good code, get paid the same as their peers, and interact with the space without being judged. And I thought like privacy is the key to that, and we need to maintain that respect that we have for every other person in this space, even if they're just a random person on Twitter who tweets about something. You don't measure them on their profile, you measure them on the shit that comes out of their mouth, the shit that they, you know what I mean?
This was sort of
and whether or
this
not
is sort of Satoshi's vision, right? Essentially.
exactly.
That's beautiful. I guess I want to kind of summarize what you just covered, because you covered a lot. So firstly, you decided to launch kind of on a whim. People said, we love this idea, Dax, like just launch it. You launch a token. You originally launched as money. Maybe why did you decide, obviously, to change from M0 and 3Y to Zera now? Obviously, I like the name much better. Change is smart, but maybe some context.
Like I said, so going back to the initial launch is when I did that bridge from my original wallet for $50, it was in January. It was throwaway. It was not meant to be even attached to this. I didn't realize people wanted to do this. And so it was a pure meme token. And I was naming it after the box or the briefcase of Monopoly money that Luigi and Mangione had left in the park after what he allegedly did. And so that was the whole thing. And there was a song out by Moonwalker called Monopoly Money as well at the same time that kind of inspired it. And I'm like, great, I got a soundtrack and I got a meme. And it has, you know, social depth to it. And that's what I threw out there. And my thesis kind of got attached to it in that, like, you have to do it. You just have to do your thesis. You have to turn it into a real product. We want to use this from the community. And so that's what I did. And so turning it from, you know, a meme which celebrates, you know, Luigi Mangione to something official, something corporate, something faceable, investable, and meaningful was a huge thing. And that's what I got feedback constantly on is you need a migration, you need to change. There's 50 different people who want to come on board and want to try it, and they heard the idea, they love it. But you know, these Coles, these, you know, these KOLs, all these people want to get on board, but like it's too much of a meme name. You got to change it. And so I didn't come up with a name. The community did. The whale chat and a few other chats came together, and I'm like, I don't have an opinion on this. I have an opinion about engineering. I have an opinion about science. Whatever you guys want to call it, we'll do it. And I really loved Zera, and a new era for zero knowledge was the tagline that they came up with. And so we took it, we ran with it, and we love it. I love it. It's become a really amazing thing. I might even get the Zera tattoo, you know, right
There we go. You might as well, dude, at this point. If you have that much, you know, love for Linux, you got to have the same amount for Zera. So I say you go and do it. What's your experience been with Solana coming from something like MetaMask, which is, you know, an Ethereum based wallet?
Oh, it's amazing. I think I can share this now, but 3 out of 5 engineers that I work directly with at MetaMask are now entirely on Solana or directly work as engineers of the Solana Foundation. So it is not just me. It is a huge component of the industry. I think a lot of us engineers, especially the senior and principal people, smart people even smarter than me, really jumped on Ethereum early, right? Because it was one of the only ones out there that had the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine. It had the ability to write and run contract code on chain, decentralized, trustless, all the things we care about, right? But and no disrespect to Vitaly, he's nice. I bumped into him once in the many years I've been around, and noticed, but like so Ethereum is the least worst. It's the best implementation of probably the worst way to do it. It's the absolute best implementation of the worst way to do it. And so a lot of us, because it was the only option, really jumped on it. And I never even liked Solidity from the start. I did Solidity auditing contracts. I talked about ERC 720 when it came out. I was around for all of that. And I just never loved the way the code was written, or it was run, or how the compile times worked. And there were a lot of stopgaps. There was a Zinc project that is still being worked on to change the underlying programming language, right? Yule was the other, Yule, whatever it was, is the alternative to Solidity. And so, we didn't really like it, and Rust had become more prevalent and more prominent. And I was using Rust, to write APIs and backends in my day-to-day job. In fact, when I was working at the AI company, it was a leap year, a leap second, and February 29th, so a leap day. And all of the functions that run the AI servers that collect all the data from users run on a clock. And so the entire system crashed because it was leap second, leap day, leap year. And so we're like, crap, how do we do this? And I found that I could write 5 lines of code in Rust, but export it to the JavaScript that we needed. And I could change 1 line so that instead of pointing to all the JavaScript time date functions that were super complicated, I could point it to my 1 10 function file, 5 function file, and fix everything forever. And when that worked like that for me with Rust, that's when it clicked. And I was like, okay, Rust has some serious shit behind it. What is going on? And I fell in love with writing Rust, learning Rust, building some hacking tools in Rust. I have a really cool, that NPM attack that came out a few months ago or a few weeks ago. I don't know if you remember it.
There was
a supply chain attack. No, was it Ledger? No, it was the NPM one where it was inside the websites.
Not sure if I'm familiar. Maybe give us a brief summary.
There was one. It was a few weeks ago. It was a big deal. It affected in-browser wallets.
I remember.
It was 4 weeks
right,
ago. Yeah. 2 weeks before that, I'd actually written that exact supply chain attack and posted it as a case study. Yeah. And so, I have always loved Rust. I thought it was a really good platform, and getting to learn it more was super exciting. And then to learn, Solana was built on Rust as a core technology that I already believed in was super powerful. And then you looked at all the advantages that Solana has, which is decentralized identity, all the things that Eric and I talked about when we go live, which is technical things, DID, sovereignty, digital asset ownership. All that stuff is governed a lot by multiple contracts, which require fees, right, to go between each other, which means that the fact that Solana has such cheap fees that the crazy, really complicated, sounds good. The crazy complicated things that we want to do, like zero knowledge proofs, are way cheaper to do. And we even said that, Ethereum feels like when you want to do the powerful things, their experiences only for the rich people. And we don't want that. We want time and money for everybody to be able to take part in this crypto, because that's what Eric and I really believe in. And Eric was my manager at MetaMask, and he has been an amazing supporter, team member, and friend, and someone to bounce off of. If we have the cash capital, I would love to hire him. I know he's on the job search right now, but he's got a family to support, so hiring him would be a top priority. In terms of team members, we have I'm making the joke in terms of full-time permanent team members. It's really me, Rico, and I'm hoping to bring on a woman whose name I cannot disclose because she hasn't left yet, but from Gemini. And she's amazing. So I guess I make the joke that we're all DEI hires because Rico and I are both gay, and Shauna will be our first woman.
Dude, there you go. Definitely.
We like to make that joke. We don't take ourselves super seriously, except for the science. The science and tech is where we thrive the most. But it's amazing. I really love working with Rico. We've worked together in the past on contracts, and he shares a lot of my close engineering opinions. So there's not a lot of arguments about going left or going right on this. We set the priority of this feature needs to get done, and we have an amazing designer who's been connected from some of our Coles and our founders for us, and we found an amazing designer who helped us design this website, who we are able to just really clearly lay out what we need from them, and they're really able to deliver what we need. And the cool thing is because I've been around so long, even the tech we picked for the designers and what I asked the designers to build inside of makes it that much easier and that much faster for us to build out these components, right? So huge shout out to Shadcn, Shadcn. He is an amazing designer, works at Vercel now, but he came out with an entire design system that's entirely downloadable, customizable, and we use that as the base for everything so that we only have to write a button or a function once, and then we can reuse it everywhere. And that's the beauty of it, is like once we get this design down, this wallet interface down, we don't have to rebuild it for the mobile app. We don't have to rebuild it for the desktop app. We can just change the code that needs to run on those devices to that correct code. But we can use all these same UI abstractions and build this unified economy and this unified design language where once you learn how to use Zera in a website, you'll already know how to use Zera on your mobile phone. You'll already know how to use Zera, on your desktop. And that's
Tell me about the Zera ecosystem. I got this pulled up on the screen, the new era of digital cash. You give a couple different examples here of what you guys build. Maybe to like kind of put a bow tie on top of the Zera conversation, what it is. Just tell us about the ecosystem, the different things you guys are focused on covering.
Yeah. It's definitely the offline transaction portion. The ecosystem will cover apps that enable the core protocol, which is just like how Ethereum or Solana is a protocol, but you've got Phantom, you've got Backpack, you've got Squads for multi-sig. Each one of these apps does a different thing on the underlying ecosystem or the underlying chain, right? We just want to enable offline transactions. That's, if you want to think about what we do, it's offline transactions, and building out products to service that is what the ecosystem is going to be about. So to start, like I said, building a better user experience for the wallet is step one. Because if you can't use your wallet easily, clearly, obviously, how are we going to guide you through or make sure you're comfortable with, as an end user, turning your cash into an offline note that, just like your wallet, if you lose it, or just like a private key, if you lose it, it's gone. So we need to build user trust first in building quality products that have meaningful interactions before you're ever going to trust us with putting $1,000 that you could easily lose on a USB somewhere. You know what I mean?
Does this go beyond crypto,
so we-
right? Because this seems like innovation that's not only positive for crypto, but positive for the broader financial world. Maybe tell us about your thoughts there.
Yeah. So the cool thing about my thesis and the underlying math, at least, is it is blockchain agnostic. Agnostic meaning it doesn't care about where it runs. If you can write code on something called Turing completeness. It is a measure in computer science of how complex a computing system is. If a computing system is Turing complete, it can run pretty much any program. Even if that's cups and water, you can set up cups and water in such a way that it is Turing complete, but that'll take forever to run. So that being said, anything that is Turing complete can run our zero knowledge proofs, which means Ethereum can do it. Layer 2 Bitcoin can do it. I don't know if Zcash supports it yet, but any layer 2 scaling solution will support it. But also, Venmo can support it. MasterCard, Visa, American Express can support it. There's nothing stopping your local bank down the street from supporting the same protocol. And in the long run, over the 5, 10, 7 years, we have a 7-year plan of working with it's called a working group. The people who come up with like the tap to pay standards and the actual like frequency standards that occur when you hold your phone near a payment processor to get that thing to work. We want to work hand in hand with them to bring this technology directly to tap and pay, so that even when you're not using crypto, privacy by default is the obvious answer.
And it seems like you're making, okay, chill, go ahead.
And just one thing I wanted to actually kind of talk a little bit about. We see you're going you're doing a lot of work on the regulatory front. So before I even get to that, Dom, did you want to stay on this for a second?
That was my next question. Clearly, he's making a push for this. He was in Texas doing all that stuff. Maybe I think our questions are probably the same.
Yeah, just give us a rundown of, this is reaching into the real world. Obviously, there's some regulatory hurdles or maybe some things that need clarified. So just kind of walk us through a little bit of the work that you're doing in Texas and how that'll benefit not only Zera, but privacy protocols everywhere.
Yeah. So there's kind of two components to that. It's both the regulatory compliance and understanding where we fall as a classification, which is really hard because we don't technically exist yet, right? We're not a bank that has pre-existing conditions and like you can point at it and go, oh, that's a bank. I know what a bank is. Therefore, you fall under banking secrecy law and compliance and know your customer law and AML law and all these things that I'm throwing out. So we don't fit that. So we have to figure out what do we exist as, and that takes a lot of money and a lot of lawyers. That's the first one. Two, if we exist as something new, are there laws that are in place that might apply to us, laws that need to be created that apply to us, or systems in place to do with that? And then three, in addition to that, what have other people done? And for our specific space in Texas, and especially with the new stock exchange and looking at partnerships, we have some very exciting partnerships we're looking forward to, specifically within the Texas government and the Texas Stock Exchange specifically. We hope to be the transmitting layer for one or two Texas government-backed currencies, cryptocurrencies. And there are some really exciting projects who are under NDA about who are working with the stock exchange to actually become just like how the US dollar is the dollar of the United States. It wasn't like that until about 1910 with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Before that, almost every state issued its own currency in its own way. And so returning to that, at least in the digital age, is something that we talked about a lot at TexCap. That is, you just scroll up back, if you just scroll back a little bit, that is actually a senator, and that is a representative. Those people were all members of the Texas government who are on stage talking about the benefits that they want to bring to Texas, which is another reason why we're building here, is we won't be taxed. They want to introduce an amendment to the Texas Constitution that will not tax securities and by extension will not tax cryptocurrency. And so they made that announcement at the conference, and staying ahead of and in line with both the lawyers that were at this conference and these policymakers like him himself to understand where they want to go with the currency is always talk to them and help influence them into the way we want to think that privacy is a right, that privacy is something we need to protect. And that those are the things that we're working towards is super important. So it's both sides of the coin. Is I need to work with lawyers, attorneys, lawmakers to find out where do we exist in this space as someone who needs to be compliant with law in order to operate a business, as well as if we don't exist yet or you don't have an opinion on us yet, how do we influence their policy and their decision making in the best way to help us succeed, to help us make sure that privacy remains a core right for everybody.
How have those conversations been going?
Oh, amazing. We have cross-aisle support from Democrats and Republicans on our first set of legislation that I put out, the Texas Privacy First Act, which I have published. I published a few weeks ago, and I met with lawmakers in Austin as well as lawyers, members of the legislature this past week in Dallas. And I've had nothing but positive feedback on that. In fact, I have a meeting later with the staff for one of the Democratic heads of finance and investments for the Texas, for the state of Texas. They run the legislative commission on passing and writing bills and governing investments, retirements, and savings throughout all of Texas. And so we're going to continue to see maybe Zera can support, backing people's, retirement accounts or investment accounts, stuff like that, and allowing all these companies which were on stage, like T. Rowe Price, JP Morgan, and these people who are doing like wrapped ETFs and systems like that to make sure that they can keep all their assets private and maintain the privacy of their clients as well. So we want to be able to serve everybody. And if we can get in on that institutional level of working with like Charles Schwab or Bank of America and being able to privately protect all of their customers' data on chain, then we'll have a really strong argument and a lot of institutional investment in making sure that we can bring offline cash to everybody.
Love it. One thing you mentioned earlier that I want to kind of touch on is When you talk about migration, you said you had insane participation. I remember seeing Migrate.fund saying in their case studies, like 85% was the high end of what you could get. And so it's really cool to see that you said you got 95%, but that only left you with what 5% of liquidity going back to the treasury. That being said,
Mhm.
how are you guys making money at the moment? It seems like you're maybe pre-revenue right now. And did you like look into fee structures to where trading fees would generate you some sort of return, or is that what you did with the whole migration thing? Touch on that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of what the community may or may not think, this was entirely, and you'll hear this from me. As much as I value the community and I'm doing this to serve the community, I'll always make business decisions from an engineering or business perspective. And so I took a look at it. I took a look at fees, what we were doing historically, and what we were missing out on through the launch platform. Which no shame to launch platforms. I think they're wonderful. Pump Fun, Bonk, they're doing really cool things, but I do think they're absolutely missing the mark on creator monetization, and that was one of our big problems. And so I looked down, I took a look at it, and I decided, for me and at least 3 other people, what do our historical fees look like without scaling, and what do our fees look like with scaling? And with that, I settled on 1%, a 1% fee on the pool would be ideal for being able to hire myself, live comfortably, and hire 2 or 3 other engineers to make sure that we can push this through to completion, regardless of what the market does, up, down, left, or right. As long as we have minimal movement and minimal trading volume, we'll be able to continue and weather pretty much any storm. And then, so that's what we've moved to is with Migrate.fund. We love working with them. Love, like I said, just talked with Jake. We're moving from Migrate.fund. They put us on Radium because that's all they had available to start. And so once this lockout period ends, we are working directly with Meteora to put the whole pool on Meteora, so we collect those Solana fees directly and take that full 1% chunk. And yeah, that should be able to fund us, or at least fund me, and fund the fight for privacy for a long
Okay,
time to come.
love to hear that switch. Meteora is a big supporter of the show. Shout out Meteora. That being said, so you're doing 1% in, 1% out. Then, is there any transaction fees or transfer fees?
No, we're not doing a token 2022 standard. That's the cool thing about my math is I did not move this to a token 2022. This is a conventional SPL token.
Okay, got you. And can you explain what that means?
It's been interesting. There were some issues with the token 2022 standard, and so not a lot of people have moved to it. And by not a lot of people moving to it, nobody's bothered to fix the issues with it. And so it hasn't been a popular answer. The token 2022 standard is a set of extensions and a newer version of the classic Solana token system that we've had for a while, but it enables things like overall fee transfers on individual transactions, being able to use, they actually do have a semi-zero knowledge proof system set up so that account balances are shielded. Not sender or recipient, you'll still see sender and recipient on the chain, but you won't actually see the balance amounts or the transaction amounts. And so that was kind of their first step into privacy, which is, again, another reason why I picked Solana. If the underlying chain is already trying to implement what I want to build, then that's a really good signal for working with, working with the Solana Foundation and with the underlying people who are already in the space, right? Because Solana Foundation is huge. They already have both industry and legislative contacts. They know how to jump through the hoops that we need to jump through as a protocol and as a company.
Love it. And as for revenue, are you guys pre-revenue right now? Okay,
Yes.
nice. How do you tie token growth to what you're building? Is there any value drive to the token at the moment, or are people speculating right now on future value that you guys are gonna be able to drive to the token?
It's pretty speculative right now. I would say outside of the concrete things we've been able to do with the funds and, like my bag that I partially liquidate just to pay for things like going to the conferences, there's been objective value to, what we've been doing, flying around, getting our name out there, name brand recognition, as well as the feedback, some of the open source that I put out, and just small tools like a base58 encoder. There should be a small VPN somewhere, but not just that, but the steps we've already taken to create a legislative framework and to build a business, do all the business filings, hire attorneys, especially to start answering and hammering out the legislative questions that, if we built this, we might, if we didn't answer these questions first and we built this, we might have ended up in jail. And so we want to make sure as we build this, we do it correctly, we do it safely, we do it ethically and fairly for everybody, making sure we're in compliance with, my moral standards of giving everyone privacy, as well as the highest standards of compliance and privacy that we possibly can. And so, I would say you're right, the main chunk of this is definitely speculation driven until we get the first few demos out. Because with the demos, the way we've built the tokenomics around this is the classic deflationary, everybody gets supply and demand thing, which is, you burn a little bit of the token in order to use the protocol or use the ecosystem, and therefore supply of token goes down, so demand goes up, and so price goes up as well. And so that will be our main set of tokenomics or modifiers. And we'll even talk with lawyers to see if maybe in the short term or in the betas we collect fees in our own token rather than a burn mechanism just to grow that that war chest. But again, like I said, I can't answer those questions until the lawyer answers those questions for me.
Gotcha.
So you're leaning towards the, hey, use our token to use our protocol, in which case naturally supply and demand should increase.
Yeah, and then it no longer speculative. It'll be very much more stable, locked to the token. You'll be able to do instantaneous, buy and burn right there in the contract, which is another thing I have to add to the to-do list. As I talk, I'm like writing down, okay, this is the other 5 things I have.
Got it. That's awesome. And so really you're leaning on the because I see a lot of questions, when demo in the chat. So I'm assuming like kind of you're leaning on the regulatory side of things as far as what you're working on with lawyers and things to kind of give you a timetable on that, and also kind of build out the top end of the funnel as far as who you can offer this to. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I can tell you right now, I cannot offer it to Iran, North Korea, or Iran, North Korea,
China.
There's one other. No, I can't offer it in China, but there are some feature limitations. For example, if we're classified as a security, no Chinese national will ever be allowed to receive an airdrop.
Okay.
That kind of a thing. Well, they can, but they then have to register with the U.S. government that they're going to get one, essentially, and that defeats the whole purpose of privacy. So,
got you. Yeah, no, makes sense.
Yeah.
What about? Unless you had to finish that thought there, you can go ahead.
No, I was trying to think.
Oh,
of more
you're good.
thoughts,
You're good.
so
Don't worry. Just relax. Nothing too crazy here. But what does competition look like? Would you say you're competing with someone like Ledger or Trezor, or who's your competition?
I don't really see us that way with competition. I think we're working in conjunction with a lot of things, and they're not the places you would normally think of. I think of Elusive, which is now pivoted to Axum or Arkham. They had a shielded pool system that for our demo, I might just rip out their shielded pool system rather than a mixer and build off of that and put our zero knowledge proofs in part of their protocol, And so it's less about, competing and building on the shoulders of giants. I think there are other technologies that are existent in the space that maybe we're competing against, not because we realize we're competing, but because they have very poor form when it comes to building open source software. I know there's a couple projects out there that I think we could benefit from using their technology that we'd be happy to license or buy from them, but they're hell-bent on using the P word and patenting it and making it so that it's not accessible or usable for the whole industry. And I'm not okay with that. And so I think those are more, and we're more competing against attitudes than we are any specific company, because I think every company out there wants this kind of privacy solution, at least everyone that I've talked to. Even Quai. Quai gave me a bunch of extra Quai when I met them at the NABS conference this week. They're super nice. I love their engineering team. Gave me a genius idea for the first demo, right? Instead of doing just QR codes and downloadable files, I can encrypt the offline notes directly into like your keychain for your passkey. So if you have like a YubiKey or one of those things, like putting it in there, and he showed me how to do that process. And like, so even competitors like Quai has their own privacy like blockchain that they're trying to do and they're building out, and it's very, very, very cool. and I love their tech. There's literally nothing stopping any other engineer that I've met from sitting down and helping me solve a problem. So I don't think I'm in a race to build this against anyone, especially when it comes to like my zero knowledge proof, my specific approach. I don't feel that I'm in a race or in a competition against anyone specific. And with that comes the fact that, like I said, I can sit down with pretty much any engineering team and give feedback on their product, and they can give me good ideas or help me solve problems on my end. Yeah.
And
You guys reply after this?
speaking of your conversation, kind of just your conversations with Trezor. You mentioned before this that you were just on a meeting with them. So like what are those conversations? I know there's things you can't disclose, but what are those conversations looking like exactly?
Yeah. So the Trezor one's a little bit of a misnomer. It's a little different. It was more on our corporate side of we want to use Trezor products to protect our assets. I think all of our major whales and most of the people on the council are already using Trezor. So it was more corporate solutionism than it was, hey, product partnership. It was, hey, how do we get this to run and protect our things? But there are other hardware companies that we've talked to specifically to do that cold wallet integration. But I do think you're kind of right. Like Trezor might be the best platform to start with, especially because even their hardware is open source. Like before the meeting, I literally was reading through on GitHub. They have a PDF of their circuit design. Like you can read through everything with Trezor, which is very, very cool. Though their hardware may not support what we need to with like generating the QR code in terms of power on that device, which is why when it comes to like the offline cache, I thought it'd be really cool to do our own version of a cold wallet that still allows you to transfer without the internet, right? There's no internet on a cold wallet, but you can still send Zera and any wrapped asset that you want between cold wallets. And so building out that cold wallet with a company called Milk 5 or the Milk 5 duo from is it Jupiter Labs, it's a Chinese or Japanese manufacturer. They're super nice. But with them, we've been working on, I ordered another 10, 20 of them, which are in shipping right now, to build out at least like a firmware level wallet that will run the zero knowledge proofs offline, and they have tech to build from. Plus, unlike Trezor, which requires you to go out and actually manufacture, even though they give you the plans, right, to manufacture a Trezor, you still have to go out and get someone to make that chipset for you. The cool thing about the Milk 5 and Jupiter and the whole team is that you're able to buy this as if it's a Raspberry Pi. You're able to go off the shelf to a Best Buy or an electronics store and buy these parts yourself to build it yourself at home. Build it with your kids, you know what I mean? And make it into a weekend project. And that's where I want to end up with our open source community and how we support them.
Very nice.
So really, it's not that you have so much competition. It's actually more, partnership potential here. How do you work on? You're still working on, I guess, fleshing out the project here and the product itself. But when it does come to distribution, it comes time to implement this SDK and get your technology in the right people's hands. How do you plan on going about that distribution? Because you're already having those conversations clearly.
Yeah, so like I said, there's a difference between what you're asking for, distribution of the technology, and offering a product or service. So product or service falls under all the legislative stuff we're doing, right? All the hard stuff like making a button that makes this all happen seamlessly is a product and is a service, right? So we have to follow US law, we have to follow regulatory agencies, all that stuff, which is a pain, but we want to get there so that everyone has the right to do that. But the cool thing is about distribution is that falls under First Amendment protection and open source software, which means when we get to a point where we have this product and service up and running and we're confident in it, I am going to open source the tech, because by that point, we'll have already been ahead. We will be operating for a while. We'll have the go-to service. And in my opinion, I think we'll have done it the best way it can be done. And at that point, it's time to give away the sauce and show everybody how it's done so that people in China, people in North Korea can fight their own government, can fight those kinds of forms of oppression and implement it themselves. So we won't be able to offer our product and service in that country, but we will give them, their developers, the tools they need to implement it on their own sites. Just like how the Solana Foundation releases the Solana SDK. So if you want to put it in, sign in with your wallet, the software that you're actually using to do that comes from the Solana Foundation. Every developer just imports it, puts it in the top corner of their page or wherever else they do it, plugs in the state so that they can manage the wallet, connect and disconnect, and do whatever custom logic they want with the contract and with that website, right? We want to do a similar thing where we're not offering a service, but we are offering the software for free, for licensing. And so that anyone in that open source ecosystem can contribute, make it better. And we can, again, like I said, the goal is to make privacy the default for the whole ecosystem.
Would you say that crypto is a fast-paced industry? It moves quickly. Would you say that this legislation and traditional, just the traditional ventures are much slower moving than crypto? And how has that affected, I guess, the rate that you're trying to go at because you have to work so closely with this legislation?
Okay, so a great answer to this is that this has been solved. In that tech has always moved way effing faster than legislation ever will.
Yeah.
For example, the next legislative session, meaning the next time, without a special session, the next time Texas will be able to pass a law will be 2027, which is insane, right? 2 years to release a new product. What? Yeah.
What?
But this has been solved in that tech companies have been working with legislators for years and years now. So we can already use the tools of the trade. Like the tools and the behaviors for this have already been taught. And it's what I learned at the tech companies, right? And that's why, even though it's 2025, we don't have another legislative session until 2027, that I'm already meeting with legislators. I'm getting the first seeds of what we need in place because it is a slow process. And just like building any product, I know that crypto moves fast and it feels fast, but I wouldn't say it's about the same pace or maybe a little faster than conventional tech, in that when we're talking about big tech or big conventional tech, not old, slow banking technology, okay, those are 500-pound ships that take 6 months to steer left or right. And there's nightmare. There's a reason why I don't work for a bank anymore. Nightmare fuel. Is that we can still release and iterate on products and services that we want rather quickly, but they still take time to develop and push out. So we're not as desynchronized with the legislative session, nor it's so out of whack that they're incompatible. We build a product in the other. When something is mathematically impossible, we go back to legislators to try and figure a way around it. When the legislators need a form of compliance, they give us a nice long timeline to do that so that over multiple software releases, we can fall and come into compliance. So I think it's a really good give and take. And while I would like sometimes the democratic process to move faster, it's slow for a reason. And I think when it comes to legislation that we talk about and iterate on properly with proper collaboration, we get it right more often than we get it wrong.
We want to be respectful of your time here, so we're going to try to keep it pretty quick from this point forward, guys. If you have questions in the chat, I would say now's your time to ask them. We're going to try to cover some of those real quickly. But I guess generally, as we wait for some of those questions, Dax, what would you say the future holds for Zera? What are you most excited about, and what does a world with this sort of privacy technology look like?
Yeah, sorry, I'm about to die. I'm walking back in to plug in my laptop. But
oh, geez, sorry, bro. We'll let you go soon.
No. It's all good. I planned for this to take up most of the afternoon, but we're good. The question was like, what do I see the future as?
Yeah, I guess it would be like roadmap for Zera. Maybe just what do you see coming up in the next initial 6 months, and just what does the future with privacy like with this technology look like?
So, at least for the roadmap and for this stuff, we're getting out the better wallet interface, our wallet, if you call it demo interface, that like I said, we want to improve the existing experience and onboard people and make them confident in our technology first. And so that's coming out first, and definitely within the next 6 months will be the offline cash demo. You will be able to take some form of note, whether that's a QR code, depending on the size of the proof that we end up with, because they can be pretty big and hefty, from everything from a QR code to a to a downloadable file, or even something that gets put into your passkey or your offline Trezor wallet. That is all something we want to push out in the next 6 months. Then in terms of the industry, it's going to be a big fight for us in terms of like making sure that privacy is the default. I think there are tons of different ways that this can go, and different ways that like privacy can be advocated for. And I don't have any specific prediction other than the fact that it'll be different than what we think it will be. But as long as we can fight to make sure privacy is the default, not just, open, give it all away, the government can track everything you do. As long as we continue to fight that, I don't think there's necessarily any wrong way for this privacy argument to go, unless it's to give up all control to the government.
Okay, I love it. One question real quick we got from Tony Baloney. Question is, will using Zero for privacy transactions come with a discount on transaction fees? So back to that tokenomics we were talking about earlier. Will using Zero for privacy transactions come with a discount on transaction fees?
I haven't really thought about that, but there's absolutely the P-Fair, the P-Fair, sorry, the fee payer system, which exists, which allows that kind of movement of who's paying the fee. And you can move that off, not even just off network, but you can move that to different sets of parties within the network. I think that would be a very cool thing to do. And just like I said, with that kind of feedback, that's now going in my notebook. Let's figure out how to do that. Let's see how that works out, because I think that's a genius idea. No, it didn't occur to me. I can't solve everything. Let's do that. If we do that, and then here we go again, lawyering. If we do that, it won't be for a while. But yeah, that's definitely something we can look into and work on. And I think that's a genius idea.
Okay, Dax, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I think we're totally aligned with the future here of privacy and the rights people should have. And, so a lot of the different conversations we had today, really interested to keep tabs on you guys. We would love for you to have this first demo. When you're ready to break this demo live, come on MCG, do it live for the people, get some live feedback. I think that'd be awesome. But any closing thoughts here? Because I think that covers most of it.
Yeah. Just for everyone out there, like I said, zero knowledge proofs, I think, are a really powerful tool for us to confirm honesty, but that also means that we need to be honest and open in how we present ourselves and how we work on this tech. And my community has been really amazing in being respectful and kind to other communities and to your show. And your show has been amazing and kind and respectful to us as well. And so I wanted to just thank you for that, and just remind everyone that, everyone's a person. I'm doing my best. I'm not claiming to have solved world hunger or any of the hardest problems in math, that we can just all make reasonable and responsible decisions. For me, that's bringing this forward. And for you as a person, being reasonable and responsible in how you use your time, spending some time, effort, and energy supporting us.
Well, listen, so Dax, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the stream. I think he's delayed just a bit. Let me see.
A little laggy.
There we go.
It's all good. Wi-Fi. He moved inside.
There we go. I got you back. No, it's been an absolute pleasure here having you back on, having you on the stream. Would again love to have you back when you're coming out with these updates. We know that there's a ton that you're working on, both on the regulatory side, but then also on the tech side of things. So as things build out, we tend to have projects on stream, and then after like 6 months, they've built out something that kind of catapults them into another phase of their roadmap. So definitely would love to have you back. I mean, amazing community, amazing product, and just excited to see not only what you do for Zera, but just for privacy protocols and privacy in general. So awesome stream, man.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, Dax, man. Talk soon.
Have a good one.
Huge. I think he was lagging towards the end there, but awesome conversation. Yeah, dude, I'm glad privacy is getting some shine here, because it's so important. Like Dax said at the start of this call, it was like, you have to go to the bank, and to show proof of funds, you have to show your address, your ID, your 3 years of, history when it comes to how much you've been earning. There's so much that goes into it. And so on a broader level, it starts here in crypto. It starts with transactions, but on a broader level, how can we get privacy to where users' privacy is respected, and we can still get those same rights that we would get if we showed all of our personal details? So really interesting conversation.
You know, my biggest thing here is I've seen so many privacy protocols before. Privacy protocols that have, used ZKP and use the underlying technology that Zera is using, and many have had the same vision of, hey, look, we want to, ZKPs affect all the things that you just mentioned, how people apply for mortgages or car loans, or it, like, this technology can be implemented in such a way to make everyday life so much easier. And these projects before have taken advantage of that narrative to say that, hey, look, we can actually build something towards that end. But so far, Zera is the only project, the only Dax is the only founder that has been boots on the ground, literally, with legislation, speaking to senators, collaborating with players and people that actually matter in making the changes, these types of changes happen. So, I think Zera is really on to something massive. I mean, when you think about the top end of the funnel and who can use this, he was talking about so many other things. It's just, yeah, the end user base is actually pretty massive, and who can use this is actually pretty dope. And that deflationary mechanism that they have is really, is really really interesting. This is a pretty interesting question here, Cuzzo. How are the conversations with the Solana Foundation going, and specifically, what's the progress on hackathon type community and industry awareness efforts? That's actually a really, really good question.
I think Dax could
Um,
probably go and kill some and crush some hackathons with this tech. So
so
maybe.
what we're gonna
Oh,
do
here.
is we're gonna have Dax explain and answer this question for you. Welcome back, homie.
We're doing the Coliseum hackathon right now. That's where I want to push out at least this really clunky, really ugly. That's why we want the wallet interface to come out first, right? I have Rico working on that. I have the designer working on that wallet interface, and we want to just release that really clunky, really ugly. It's going to be like an ugly ass TXT file that comes down magically out of the chain to give you that offline note, and you're going to print it out and hand it to someone else, and they're going to type it in, and we're going to see if you can redeem it offline. And like, that's how clunky like the demo is going to be, but that's going to be kind of what we want the hackathon submission to be, for that absolute proof of concept that, like, if you can do that, right? If you could just type in a password and magically have $50 that was anonymously transferred from somebody else on chain, I think that's a pretty powerful demo of like, hey, our underlying tech works. And that's where we're trying to get to. And I did have something on test chain, but I crashed Solana after 5,000 transactions. So we're figuring it out. We're getting there. And like I said at the end of the earlier, is it's all about community, and it's all about being honest and open about what we're doing. And that I haven't claimed to, solve world hunger. I'm just making responsible engineering decisions. And so part of that is getting it to work at scale. And so, yeah, no, that's what we want to release, at least for this Coliseum hackathon, at the end of the month, or, coming into next month, depending on how this window is, because it has taken a lot out of me. I've been doing 50, 60 different things every day. So we're getting there.
That was a banger clip. I'm glad you came back on to answer that question, because I think like that puts it really, really beautifully. It's like, even the first demo, the first test project, it might be ugly and clunky, but if you can factually get someone to send you a physical note, and you can type in a password and have it redeemed offline, that's powerful. And I think that idea is what people kind of need to grab. If they could only take away one thing from this whole conversation, it's like that idea right there is powerful. Awesome. Well, there we go. This time, Dax, we're done with you, buddy.
Appreciate you coming back on to answer that question, Dax. Chad, you're a legend.
Yeah, you're a beast, man. Thanks. Take it easy, brother.